1. Backstory. So I work front desk at a mental health clinic where my job is mostly customer service, switchboard, and making appointments. Usually I pop by the grocery store on my way home after work to pick up whatever I need for dinner. Since I almost always go at the same time most weekdays, I've come to recognize a few of the regulars. Anyway, I was looking over the wine selection the other day trying to decide how cheap I wanted to go on a red wine for my mushroom dish, when I hear this couple turn down the aisle. I glance up real quick just to make sure I'm not in the way of what they want, and recognize an older couple that I see occasionally in the store. Keep in mind I'm wearing a blue blouse, skirt, high heels, and have my badge clipped to my collar. After a minute I finally decide what wine I want, and just my luck, it's on the top shelf out of my reach, so I turn to ask one of the couple if they wouldn't mind reaching it for me. "Excuse me?" The woman cuts me off before I can finish my sentence.
"Finally! I need to know what wine is going to pair well with..."
some dish I think was pasta. I stare at this woman for a good few seconds, wondering why she thought I was the best person to ask about wine pairings. The silence stretches into an awkward interval, before I finally come up with a reply. "Oh, sorry. I'm not really a wine person, I'm just making mushrooms tonight." I hold up my basket with my mushrooms and produce it for her to see. The woman rolls her eyes at the man with her before turning back to me and sniffing indignantly.
"Well, you're not very competent, are you?"
At this point I'm getting more uncomfortable with this whole thing, so I put on my best customer service voice and try to smile. "I'm sorry I can't be of more help." The man with this woman leans in towards her and tries to whisper,
"I don't think she works here. She's wearing a badge from another company."
Finally, the woman realizes that I'm not an employee, and I can see her eyes narrow dramatically at my badge. She actually tosses her hair over her shoulder like a drama queen high schooler before snorting,
"No wonder you're no help. You work in a loony bin all day."
Her reply completely shocks me, and I just stand there for a minute, staring helplessly as the woman seems to grow redder by the minute. The man is trying to apologize over her shoulder, but she shoves her hand up in his face to cut him off. Wanting no part of this situation, I grab the wine bottle closest to me and dart away from the aisle. As I'm walking away as fast as I can in heels, I hear the woman berating the man for making her look like a fool. By the time I get home and stop shaking from anger, I realize that I had bought a sweet Zinfandel instead of the dry red I needed. So I curled up in my couch and had wine for dinner instead of mushrooms. Screw that lady. 2. So I arrive into work yesterday for the opening shift, and my manager discovers the internet is completely wiped out, meaning that not only does our Wi-Fi not work, but the card machines won't process any payments and the tills are being unpredictable and constantly crashing. Not too much of an issue since we could still take cash and work around the annoying till issue, even if it caused a few delays. Most people were coming down seeing the cash-only signs we'd put out, and then either leaving to go get cash or asking us where the nearest ATM was. Just on the corner outside the complex we were in, about 1 to 1.5 minutes walk max, and then happily returning. Around midday though, my co-worker had gone on her break and my manager was busy on the phone speaking to the people who could hopefully sort the whole thing out and get the internet back up and running. And I have this man and his young son come in. I'm working both tills by myself. I work in an activity center, which is a bar, so I was manning said activity till and the bar at the same time, which isn't usually an issue as we tend to be quite quiet during the week. I was making 2 cocktails when this man came in, and obviously I needed to finish these first before I could serve him on the activity till. He was waiting a max of 2 minutes total, probably less. Now, this is important in a second. I go over once I'm done, and the guy either didn't see the cash-only sign, or decided to ignore it because he whipped out his card, and I tried to explain that I couldn't take any card payments whatsoever, unfortunately.
"But I've come all the way from Entitlesville for this."
"I'm really sorry about that, but I'm afraid there's nothing I can do." Explains where the nearest ATM is.
"And what about when I come back? Will I have to queue again, if there's a massive queue?"
There was a queue behind him of about 2 groups currently, not big at all. I explained that he'd only experienced a wait because I was by myself and was finishing a customer drinks order, which I most likely wouldn't be doing when he got back. So yes, he would have to queue if there was a queue when he returned, but it would likely be less of a wait time anyway, as I can get through groups on the activity till very quickly and send them down to do whatever activity. Remember, he'd only been waiting max 2 minutes to begin with. He was visibly frustrated, going a bit red as he moaned and moaned, before exclaiming that this was all very, very bad customer service on my part. I was stunned, just stood there apologizing over and over as he berated me, while other customers looked on bewildered. Eventually he rolls his eyes, tutted, and dramatically picked up one of our TripAdvisor leave a review cards and stormed out. What a wild ride. I sort of hope he leaves a bad review just for that claim to fame. 3. So during uni, I used to work part-time as a barista at a local non-chain place that was heavily frequented. The lady who owned the place was mildly famous in the coffee world, having won awards such as Best Barista, Best Cafe, etc. numerous times. After a few years working there, I also managed to snag a few barista awards, which is where the problems happen. As anyone who drinks coffee knows, once you get a barista and cafe you like, you tend to stick to them like a raccoon sticks to an unlocked dumpster. So I had a few people who only ever came in my shift. It was mostly good. People tended to be polite but picky. Was at this stage debating if I wanted to make a career move into cafes and hospo. So I didn't mind the few annoying people we got, cost of business and all. There was, however, one small group of very annoying people who would come in every Friday around 5:20, closed at 5:30, in their pack of 4 or 5 before shuffling back down to the game shop a few doors down. Much as I don't mind gamers, being one, Pathfinder for the win, a couple of these guys were the stereotype never bathe variety, and would fill the cafe with an aroma somewhere between week-old pizza and "I saw a shower once and it scared me." Did not help they tended to order the most sugary, messy, and non-coffee drinks on offer, frappes, iced coffees, usually with 3 or 4 times syrups, etc. Was a pain in the ass to clean, pain in the ass to serve, and made sure every Friday we finished 15 minutes later than we should have, since they didn't want anyone but me making their damn drinks. Fast forward a few years, recently graduated and working in a new career, all is well. Celebrating at the cafe, since by now I'm very good friends with the owner and other staff. Officially stopped working here several weeks ago when sitting final exams, etc. Good times. The mistake was this Friday afternoon. The owner had closed us up half an hour early to throw a small party. So while all the chairs were still out, all the signage had been brought in and turned off. Q 5:20, and our wonderful pack shuffles by. Undeterred by the lack of open signs, the locked side doors and the sign on the door that said "Private Party," they shamble inside and mull around the counter. Owner informs them that the place is closed, politely asks them to leave. After some discussion amongst themselves, they decide she's lying and demand their usual. Owner is less polite this time, firmly asks them to leave, we're closed, come back tomorrow. Whatever passes for a leader among this group, seriously, does it work on who has the stronger BO? Or who can wear the same hoodie the longest or something? Does not like this, and starts yelling about discrimination and demanding service specifically from me. I inform said alpha hoodie I actually stopped working several weeks ago. And even if I did still work there was no way I'd serve him if he was acting like that. The guy didn't like this one bit. His voice went up several pitches, and he started screaming about how we were discriminating against him, demanding I give them their drinks for free, and how they were going to complain to the owner and have us all fired. I guess he figured females can't own and operate stores, despite their name on the wall. Being refused again by myself and the owner, and reminding them again that I no longer work there and then told, much less politely, to leave, the guy turns about as red as the bag of Doritos I assume they had in store for later, and has a total meltdown. We're talking toddler, foot-stamping, screaming tantrum. I swear the guy was moments away from a heart attack with how red he was getting. He rages about how women can't tell him what to do, that I'm lying because I'm too stupid to work elsewhere and, insert racist slurs here, then uses his considerable bulk to push the espresso machine off the counter. Now these things are not only very heavy, they're also very expensive. Tens of thousands of bags of Doritos expensive. The guy is still having his tantrum when the police arrive, probably not helped by the fact that once they had him sitting in the back of the car, I smirked and told him I didn't work there, setting him off again. Guy ended up being charged for a handful of things, including destruction of the machine. He and his pack were obviously banned from our cafe, and the neighboring ones, all having a friendly relationship with us, also banned him. Icing on the cake was the local gaming shop also banned him and his crew, and attempted to distance themselves as much as possible from that sort of patron. Adding in, still very good friends with the owner who now owns several cafes. She started her own chain, and I help out now and then when I'm off work and going to be there chilling with people anyway. The machine itself costs somewhere in the region of 11 to 12,000 Great British pounds, La Pavone machine, so we're looking at 14 to 15,000 US monies for the machine itself. When it was pushed over, a few things cracked, snapped or bent, and it had to be sent back to the manufacturer for repair. Thankfully the country has a pretty huge love of coffee, so the owner was able to snag a loan machine from our roaster until we had the machine back. Downside, the machines are connected to a water supply, so the rear of the counter drowned. The place was only closed the following day for cleaning and setup of the new machine, so losses weren't as bad as they could be, costing the owner $0, however. Insurance took the hit. Guy who did the damage had to cover the excess. The game store nearby was actually pretty happy to ban this particular group. While they apparently still had a few folks with the substandard hygiene and placing on the tantrum scale, this group was one of the worst. So once they were banned, they later reopened some of the casual late nights for people to come in to one-shot campaigns in various games, or board and card game nights. They got enough foot traffic that the cafes started staying open an hour or so later on specific nights for takeaway coffee, as there was enough people coming to and from the shop. The place still has its issues during the more quiet parts of the day, but during busy peaks when the worst offenders are hiding in their caves, it was generally a fun place to chill. The new Pathfinder seems great. Nostalgia is telling me that it's not as good as the original, but that same nostalgia tells me that terrible CRPGs are good, just because they're old and were fun when I was 10. Definitely liking the new TML system, and how they've worked races, Ancestry, with feats everywhere. Overall, seems like it's far more streamlined and much easier for new players to get into. Here's hoping for a Skrulls and Shackles 2.0. The new character sheets are a work of art though. Coffee industry awards are sort of a big thing in the coffee industry. You have everything from the local best coffee, atmosphere, food in the town of Z, up to regional, national level. But many of these contests are self-entry and a lot of places don't bother or care. At the international stage, you have things like the Best Barista Awards to boutique coffee types and funky coffee art awards. It's all interesting to watch, but I could never do more than basic coffee art, so stuck to just making great, consistent coffee. Anyways, found people didn't care how pretty their coffee was if it took 5 to 10 minutes to make, and would rather have something that tastes good in half the time. And if you get takeaway, not like you can see the art anyway. Honestly, if you're taking more than 2 minutes per standard coffee, including cleanup, it's too long, and you should be able to make two at the same time without sacrificing quality. 4. I used to work at a grocery store, and got put in charge of assisting with the 3 self-scan lanes. For those unaware, this involves helping people figure out how to do produce and baked goods that don't have barcodes, finding the obvious button for looking up their customer card, making sure people don't steal on purpose or accident, and bagging if I have time. What many customers don't realize is there are security features that check the item weight and height, so you don't try to sneak extra items on the belt, or scan one and put another on, which causes the belt to reverse. I also have an employee card with bonus features which includes security override, as sometimes it gets it wrong. I like the self-scan shifts as you stay busy and move around so they go fast. Even though you get lots of repeat questions, mostly, hey, this is supposed to be on sale, but they didn't scan their customer card yet. Sorry, that was a lot of setup, but it's important for the story. In this story we have me and British Lady Customer. I'm watching the 3 lanes helping customers when I spot British Lady getting something sent back to her a lot, which means I need to use my override. I go over to her lane and this is our interaction. Hi, how can I help you? My meat keeps getting sent back. No problem, sometimes these machines are tricky. At this point I scan her ground beef and it gets sent back. Now I'm prepared to use the override. It's at this point I notice a puncture in the plastic wrap, and notice some seems to be missing, which would trigger the security skill. Miss, apparently you grabbed a package with a hole and some is missing, that's why it keeps coming back. You can go grab a different package and I'll damage this one.
Oh, it's okay, I was hungry so I ate some.
18-year-old me may have involuntarily made a face at this point. You ate the raw ground beef? I had to make sure I heard her right.
Yes, you Americans are too uptight. A little raw meat isn't going to hurt anyone.
I wasn't sure what to say at this point. I mean, I enjoy medium rare hamburgers, but that's pretty much the limit. It should be cooked at least a little. Plus, we're in a grocery store where we have a large variety of snacks, including some hot prepared food that is pretty good. Okay, I can force it through for you.
Thanks.
She finishes up her order and is on her way. I walk over to my manager and tell him the story. He, like me, is shocked. He says this is the best customer story he's ever heard. He actually later calls another front-end manager from another store and tells him the story. They apparently try and one-up each other with customer stories. The other manager is just as shocked as Tom and I are. 5. I seriously am going to start wearing headphones whenever I'm not holed up in my store's grooming salon. I wear a bright blue smock and black pants for my uniform, and I don't even bother to unzip the smock during lunch. Doing so typically unleashes a storm of loose fur that's been trapped. The grocery store next to my store has a little dine-in area, so I'll usually buy a sandwich and drink my water while browsing the internet. Yesterday it was pouring and the lines were slow, so I was especially grumpy, having lost a third of my break to being sudden and the self-checkout not taking my money. I felt bad for being short with the person manning the registers, but I was stomach rolling over itself levels of starving and again, wet to the bone. I did go back and apologize before fleeing into the rain again. Anyway, finally I get lunch. Served with a side of stairs because once again soaked to the bone. I looked like I was the one who took a bath instead of the dogs. I set up my phone and start reading when I hear someone say excuse me. I ignore them. The call comes again, louder. I ignore them again. I'm on my lunch. Food is about to enter my mouth. It's going to be delish. Someone touched my shoulder. I have major personal boundary issues. So much so my co-workers and friends will ask before giving me physical affection. So I jump, nearly spitting out the single bite of delicious lunch I had. Person is an older woman who looks like she'd own a big lab or a cat from the black fur on her white shirt. She starts asking me questions about grooming and what she could get at this store that was comparable to mine. When I told her I don't look at grocery aisles except for cat toys and litter boxes, she got huffy with me, saying I ought to know. I don't remember exactly how I worded it, but I basically said I have a discount at my store and the food supplies and atmosphere are much better there than here. You're also asking me to give you information on what could be considered a competitor, and I'm on my lunch. Please leave me alone. I think she stared at me as I proceeded to inhale my sandwich, staring intently at my phone all the while. But she didn't say anything. She finally left me alone so I could eat, go apologize to the cashier, then run back to my job to finish up my shift. Funny thing though, she's not the first person to talk to me in the other store about my job. I don't mind, if I'm in line or otherwise not on my phone, but I only get 30 minutes, you all. And typically my lunches are my best meals ever because it's between a lot of heavy lifting. Please let me eat in peace. I'll talk to you walking, standing in line, wherever else. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Adventures in Fast Food and Retail, number 33. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Go right ahead, buddy. Bark away. Done with the stories. You have a good time. Yes, and that person that was blaring their horn earlier, they can feel free as well. You see, I'm far less grumpy when the recording's done. When I am literally one line away from finishing on my recording for the day, that could be a little bit of an issue if there's going to be lots of woofing. I mean, really, just hush up for a few seconds, that's all. That's all I require. Okay, and with that I think I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.